All right, so today we are talking about real world quick turn deals. So an inside look at how real deals unfold and how they can drive exceptional profit. So the reason I did this live tonight is because I talked to a lot of people in the group. I talked to a lot of people on Messenger. Aisha talks to a lot of people on Messenger. Not in San Francisco. I talked to a lot of people in Messenger, and one of the things that always comes up is, what is your goal? What do you want to make in real estate? And everybody has these weird goals. Some people are like, I want to make $30,000 a month. Some people are like, I want to make $5,000 a month. Some people are like, they don't know what they want to make. So I even had somebody tell me today they don't care about the money. They just want to get the knowledge. And I don't know about you, but I don't care about the knowledge. I just want to get the money. The knowledge is cool, but if I got to use it to get the money, I care about getting the money. I can't feed my kids knowledge as much as I want to. So let's get into this. Let's talk about some real deals and how they look and how they come about. Can everybody see my screen? I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Can everybody see my screen okay? Let me know in the chat if you can see my screen, please. All right. Thank you, Claudia. All right. So let's get going. So let's start with this first one. When does quick turn make sense? So for those of you that don't know, because you're new to the group or maybe you're just coming in, quick turn is a variation of a process called wholetailing. Wholetailing. I am not saying wholesaling. I am saying wholetailing. Wholetailing is the process of buying a property and then turning around and selling that property before you fix it up, before you put any money into it. You just sell it. Now, the first question you're going to ask is, Art, how can I buy a property and then turn around and sell it? I just paid what the house is worth. How can I sell it for a profit? That's the thing. You're not going to pay what the house is worth. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit because I want to break some deals down for you. But that's the whole premise. Things that you have got in your head about how things have to go, it does not have to go that way. You do not have to pay market value for a property. And if you can do that, if you actually make your business not paying market value, you can make money much faster and much quicker and a lot more in a relatively short time. And I'm going to show you how to do that tonight. So when does quick turn make sense? There's a couple of scenarios where it makes excellent sense. So I want to touch on those. First is when you want to build a business. A lot of people look at real estate as investing. How many people say, I'm a real estate investor? I want to be a real estate investor. I do not call myself a real estate investor. The main reason I don't call myself a real estate investor is because we have a business. So you wouldn't call the owner of McDonald's, he wouldn't call himself a hamburger maker. He wouldn't call himself a fry guy. He would say, I have a business and we just trade, or we do business in French fries and hamburgers. Same way with real estate. We have a business where we trade in real estate, but we have a business. It's a fully functioning business. And the sooner you think of it as a business, the faster and better and the more logical you can think about the transactions that you make. I hope that makes sense to you guys, because there is a distinct difference between looking at a business versus looking at just being an investor. And I want you to understand that. So the next thing is when you have limited skills. For example, some people are contractors. I talk to people all the time and they're contractors. They are electricians. They're all these other kinds of contractors that do work on property. And they'll say, well, I want to fix and flip properties. Why? You don't have to do that. And just because you have the skill doesn't mean you have to do that skill in your business. There was a business book called The E-Myth that I read years ago. It's a very good book by a guy named Michael Gerber, and it's called The E-Myth. And it talks about how people that are good at doing a skill think that they would automatically be good at a business, because their logic is, well, I'm good. My boss is an idiot. I'm better than him, or her. I can do the business much better. But when you actually understand a business, a lot of times the skill is like one of the least things that you care about. You care about a lot of other stuff. You got to have a lot of skills to run a business. So we want to focus on having those business skills, not so much we know how to work on houses, we know how to manage tenants or anything like that. That stuff is helpful, but it's not going to help you in this business. I hope that makes sense. The other thing is when you aren't sure how to start investing. If you've taken any investment courses, the way 99% of investment courses work, They tell you all these different ways you can make money in real estate. You can fix properties and flip them. You can rent them out. You can do the BRRRR method. You can wholesale them. You can flip land. They give you a ton of stuff. And you feel when you've done all of it, when you learn all that stuff, like, wow, this is great. I'm learning a lot of stuff. But then at the same time, you didn't learn the steps to start. We like to focus on one way, one process, one way to do things, if that makes sense. Because when you have one way to do things, one process, you get really good at that process and you can go much faster and you can make money. And the way you make money in this business, don't let anybody tell you different, is speed. Real estate is not a fast business by trade. So you have to be the speed in the real estate business. So I hope that makes sense for you. So another thing is when you want to replace your income, if you're someone who works a daily 9-to-5 job, I've worked a 9-to-5 job. I literally, and I'm not joking about this, I worked a 9-to-5 job for literally 1 year in my life. When I came out of college, I got a job at a bank and I was an auditor. I have a finance degree. I was an auditor, worked for 1 year. After that, I started real estate and I stopped my job. I actually did a deal and I made my annual income on that one deal and I quit. I don't want to say I quit. I got fired, but I was going to quit. I got fired that same week that I closed the deal. So it's a long story. I'll talk about it in another video, but it can replace your income. I've lived off of real estate since I left that business. It's been great for me and it'll be great for you. It's something that can definitely replace your income. And two, when you don't have time to do a traditional strategy, if you've learned anything about wholesaling, if you learned anything about the BRRRR method, it requires you to do a whole bunch of skip tracing and finding owners of property and cold calling and all these other things. You don't have to do all of that. I know they tell you have to do all of that and that's the work, but you actually don't have to do all of that stuff and you can still be very successful in real estate. And a lot of people get sidetracked on doing that little stuff and then they never get to the actual check, the money. The goal is to get to the check. And they never get there because of the fact that they can't, they're so focused on doing cold calls and they get burned out. They're so focused on skip tracing houses and then they get burned out. I don't want that to happen to you guys. So I'm going to talk about this way so you all can see it and understand what I'm talking about. So why is QuickTurn a business? Why do we talk about it being a business or talk about it as a business? QuickTurn is not focused on the property. I touched on that earlier, talking about how QuickTurn is not focusing on just the property. When you're an investor, you might say, oh, I'm in the process of buying this house. We don't look at it that way. If you've seen 1 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, you've seen every 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. The bedrooms look the same. They're 4 walls and a door. Same way with houses. Houses in general, we trade in houses. We just buy the houses. We don't care about one particular house. And when you look at it that way, it changes your focus from the houses to the business. QuickTurn focuses on negotiation. How you're negotiating the deal is going to make you a lot more money. Did you know there's no faster business in the world than negotiation? Where else can you say, the person says, I want 100,000. You say, I'll give you 85,000. And you go back and forth. And that few minutes of going back and forth, you've made $10,000 or $15,000 by getting them to discount that number. That's the fastest money you're ever going to make. So QuickTurn focuses on negotiation because that's the real business that you're in, whether you know it or not. QuickTurn builds a consistent business. It never stops. So the process that we do, it's like an engine. You get it going and you get it started and it never stops. It never slows down until you either get out of the business or you sell the business. And yes, a QuickTurn business is possible for you to sell because you treat it as a business. So that's something that a lot of people can't offer in real estate. QuickTurn requires you to think about real estate differently. You're going to have to take a different look at real estate. I'm going to show you in a few minutes some examples of thinking differently in real estate and how profitable it can be when you think differently. And finally, QuickTurn is built to scale and get you out of the day-to-day mundane part of the business. We all want to get in this business and make money. That's a very exciting thing for us, to get into the business, start making money. But once you start making the money, it gets very boring. Doing the same thing over and over again, talking to sellers over and over again, it gets boring. And you're going to be making money. You don't want to spend your time talking to these sellers and doing all of this stuff. You can scale up with QuickTurn and do it in a way where you don't have to do that day-to-day stuff. You hire people to do that and you spend your time only doing the most important parts of the business. So I hope that makes sense. QuickTurn will build a business in spite of you. I say in spite of you because a lot of times we're stuck in what we think business should be. We think business is getting business cards and getting all this stuff set up. I want to get my LLC set up. I want to get my bank account set up. I want to get all of that stuff is the fun in the beginning stuff. That stuff gets old real fast when you're really building a business. The fun stuff is actually getting the checks, and that's where most people never get to in their business. So I hope that makes sense for you guys. Does this make sense to everyone so far? Let me know in the comments if what I'm saying makes sense so far before we get into these deals, because when I get into these deals, I get excited and I'm going to go pretty quickly and it's going to be hard to stop me. So I hope this is making sense to you guys. So let's look at some real world quick turn deals. I'm going to break this down for you in the best way that I can. If you have questions, try to stop me and ask me. I'll try to answer questions if it makes sense. So let's look at a quick turn deal. And I want you to open your mind up to see why this deal is different from what you're probably used to, because you're used to talking with realtors and they show you some houses and then you decide what to buy, or you skip trace properties. Let's talk about some deals. So this is the first one we're going to talk about. This property right here. This is a property that was purchased about, I want to say, a year ago. So in 2023, the interest rates were rising. People were starting to pull back. The house did not look like this. This is just I don't keep pictures of the houses. I don't care to keep pictures of the houses. This is a picture of the house now, how it looks now. Whoever bought it made it look pretty like this. It didn't look bad, but it just didn't look like this. So I want to be clear. So let's look at it. The first thing we did was we did some marketing. And in our marketing, we identified an area that had a disproportionate amount of investors that were trying to buy into it. First of all, most people don't even think about marketing for real estate. If you do think about marketing, how many of you all actually look at why you want to choose an area? Like why you would want to buy in that area? One of the things we do is look at who's buying in that area, because is it easier to sell in an area where everybody wants to buy, or is it easier to sell in an area where you think you can get a cheap house? You don't want a cheap house. You want an area everybody wants to buy in, because that's going to make you more money. So the first thing we did was we identified an area that had a disproportionate amount of investors trying to buy into that area. And we have a process to do that. So the second thing that came about, the seller called us. This was a seller that called us, reached out to us, said, hey, I've got a house I want to sell. They bought the property to do a fix and flip. They were like most investors. They wanted to buy it, fix it up, and sell it. And they bought it 5 years ago from the day that we talked to them, or they contacted us. They bought it as a fix and flip. The house was not fixed, and it definitely wasn't flipped. The problem was the seller ran out of money to rehab the property. And in that 5-year time, the seller was a woman. There was a husband and a wife. The wife was the one that called us, and she bought the house and they were going to fix it up. They started on it, ran out of money. The husband's job relocated him, and he actually had to move out of state. So they moved out of state. So now they've got this property that's not ready to move in. They couldn't rent it out. They couldn't sell it and get any significant money for it, at least they thought. And so they just held on to it for a long time while they were out of state, and they were living in another state while they had this house. The other issue is that because they weren't there in the city dealing with that house, the city had put tickets on the property due to neglect. So things like not cutting the grass, things like the water bill. The cities like to charge for water even if the water's not running. All these different tickets that were on the property. If you've ever been a landlord or been a real estate owner and had property that sits, you will get tickets and all kinds of fines and fees from the city. So that's just something that happens. So let me talk about the terms. They bought this property for $38,000. When they came to us, we did our process that we normally do to negotiate with the seller. And they talked about they wanted 25. After we talked them down through our negotiation, we have a script that we follow. And the script is very good at getting the seller to tell us what they want on the house. The property was worth, they wanted $25,000. They estimated that the property was worth about $40,000. So they were only looking for $25,000. They just wanted to get out of the property, pay off the city, and walk away. So here's what we ended up offering them once they went through our process and everything else. Now, remember, we bought this property sight unseen. We did not go to the property. I've never been to this property. I've never walked into this house, but we bought the property very confidently because our process allows us to buy properties without physically going to them. We literally do everything from our desk. So we got them to accept an offer. Now, I know these numbers are going to sound strange, and I'm going to show you some other examples, but we offered them $4,000, and we offered to pay off the $25,000 in city fines. They actually had $25,000 in city fines, so they didn't know that at the time. They just knew they had some city fines. And so we offered them $4,000 for their own pocket, and we would pay off the $25,000 in city fines. They agreed to that number once they saw the fines, because they said all that's going to happen is going to go up, and we're not going to get anything. So they agreed to the $4,000. Now, I know you're thinking, well, that's just an amazing deal that you got $4,000 for a house. This is not. This is just a typical deal with what we do and the way. Remember, we're calculated in everything from when we market to when we make offers to when we negotiate. Everything is calculated. So these deals are going to sound crazy, but it's what we do, and we get them all the time. So we negotiated the city fines down to $10,000. So we got the city to go down to $10,000 on this $25,000 in fines. I'll explain that, but cities are greedy just like everybody else. They want money, and if you offer them cash, then they're like, okay, we'll take less. And we negotiated it down to $10,000. So we're into this property for a total of $14,000 plus closing costs and everything else. So let me show you what ended up happening with this property. We sold this property not at $40,000, but at $65,000. $40,000 in profit. And when I want to be clear, when I say $40,000 in profit, that's what we made after closing costs, after all the fees. We did a $40,000 profit. The house sold in less than a month. And this was when interest rates were rising. This is when the market was slowing down. But deals happen regardless of the market. I've done other videos about how you can ride the wave, it doesn't matter where the market is at. This property sold for $65,000. This is a small deal, but we were able to make a $40,000 profit in less than a month. Does that make sense to you? Do you get where we found the pressure points with this person to still put together a deal? Let me know in the comments if this deal made sense. Did I miss anything? Did I lose anybody? Do you get how this deal came together, what the situation was with the seller and everything else? So that's deal number one. I'm going to show you another one. Yeah, good profit, very easy deal. It happened in less than a month. Did you negotiate with the city before closing? So good question, Jill. No, we did not negotiate. Well, let me take that back. Let me think. No, what we did was we reached out to the city. I remember. We reached out to the city and told them that we were buying it, but the only way we could buy it is if they would entertain taking a discount. They said they would entertain a discount. Once they said that, we did not finish the transaction with the city until we closed, because we didn't want the seller to say, oh, you're going to negotiate with the city. I want more money. They don't get the money for negotiating. We negotiated with the city, so we get the money. So we did negotiate, but we negotiated initially just to make the introduction of, hey, we're going to be coming to you with some money. And then once we knew they were okay, then we closed and everything else. No, we did not put the money for the city in escrow. We did a very straightforward deal. How can I say this? When you do enough deals, you have a very strong cash flow. So we were able to take $10,000 cash to the city, and we just paid them. So we didn't have to get a line of credit or anything like that. You'll see where we get our money from in just a second. So just watch how this goes. So let's talk about another real world quick turn deal. I know that one seems like, wow, you got a house for $4,000. How did the seller know you'd pay it? The seller didn't care. The seller knew that they were going to get clean title. They were going to get relieved of all of the debt, meaning the city stuff, when they sold the house. They don't care. They just want to know that, hey, I'm not responsible for this, which they weren't, and they were good to go. So let's talk about another real world quick turn deal. This is a very simple house, very reasonable. Now, I want to be clear. This one looked exactly like this when we bought it and when we sold it. Nothing changed. We did nothing to the house. This is the condition it was in. This house was rented out when we bought it. So in this scenario, we did our marketing. We identified an area that had a lot of first-time homeowners looking to buy. So this had an area where a lot of first-time homeowners, there's some affordable areas where first-time homeowners just want to get into. So we identified that market and we did some marketing. The seller that sold us the property had bought this property and rented it out for 12 years. So they had tenants in the property, had been renting it for over 12 years. It was great property, tenants paid, didn't have any problems. And about to close, are you physically there? So initially, Florence, good question. When we started this business, initially we went to every closing. Now we close so often, and at a certain point, it gets repetitive. We give our attorney power of attorney to go to the closing, and they can close with us. They send us whatever paperwork that we need before the closing. We can look at it. We take time. If you've ever gone to a closing, isn't it frustrating how you go to the closing and you get that HUD or that master statement and it shows you everything, and then the numbers are a surprise for you, and you're kind of like at the closing, you don't have time to say, what about this? You just have to, okay, I guess it's fine. We don't do that. Once we show you our process, we get all of that stuff the day before. So we have plenty of time. And believe me, if you don't think these closing companies, these title companies make mistakes, they make them all the time. We get the stuff early so we can review it. We can go over it line by line. And we literally line by line will argue about things, but we get it worked out. So by the time the closing comes, as long as nothing changes, it's signed off by our attorney. We are doing whatever we're doing, living life. We got a closing tomorrow. And the agent, that's, long story short, we got to close tomorrow. I'm not going to be there. They sent me the paperwork today. I signed off on it, said it was fine. We'll get a check for that closing tomorrow. It'll just be deposited into our bank account, and I don't have to see the property. I don't have to talk to anybody else. It's a business. We don't do all of that. Okay, so this one, seller bought the house, rented it for 12 years. So they were just, problem was the seller was older and they were tired of being a landlord. Nothing serious. How you look for those lists of people that are struggling and they're behind on bills? This house would have never shown up on any of those lists. Nothing was wrong with the house. Wasn't dilapidated, didn't have city fines, didn't have foreclosure. The person owned it free and clear. Nothing wrong with it. Seller was just older and tired of being a landlord. House had no issues, just ready to sell. So here's what the seller wanted. The seller wanted, after we go through our process, and remember, they didn't just come to us and say, this is what I want for the house. We have a process to get them to tell us what they want. Seller wanted $76,000 for the property. Seller estimated the value was $105,000. So that's what they figured the value was on this property, $105,000. What we ended up doing was we offered them $46,000. We go through a process, and the process is meant to steadily knock them down on their price. We bring up a bunch of stuff. Did you think about this? What about this? Who's going to take care of that? And it's meant to mentally get them to lower their expectations. Do you know when you're negotiating with sellers, you're actually not negotiating with them on numbers. You're actually negotiating their expectations. And if you can learn to manipulate, I don't want to say manipulate because that sounds kind of
Yep, say manipulate.
but if you learn how to work them and lower their expectations, they can expect what they can expect, but at the end of the day, they expect to get less. You get exactly what you want, and you'll get good numbers. We offered them 46 to sell, and we would deal with the tenant, so they wouldn't have to deal with the tenant and everything else. This property we bought, they agreed to the number. We sold the property at $116,000. We had a $55,000 profit on this deal. And again, when I say profit, I mean the money that came into our it's not finding them. They come to us. It's a process. Do you notice how the first thing I talk about is the marketing? How do we go about finding these deals? This is all a process. And when you work a process the right way, you're going to get great numbers. So that's another answer. So we did, that one took 90 days. I skipped ahead on my things, but that one took 90 days to close. But again, you don't really care how long it takes to close because it's going to close quickly and you're not going to spend time working on this deal. You're going to go on to the next deal. This is a business. You're steadily, no bids from tax offices, no long drawn out stuff. These are regular people. They just aren't attached by, we deal in, Florence, good question. We deal in 3 states. We deal in Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, but I can tell you from our students that it works in every state. I have yet to see a state where our process does not work. It works in California, works in Florida, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina. It works everywhere. It's not the state. There's not a trick. And if you know anything about Illinois, it's one of the most crooked, I don't want to say it. It's one of the most difficult states to do business in because they're greedy and they just are a pain in the butt. And so if we can do it in Illinois, believe me, you can do it anywhere. So let's go to another one. Let's go to a deal with a landlord and a situation. So this property, 2-flat. This is a 2-flat building. Looks like this. Grass is cut. It's not great. It's not flashy. If I saw this, it looks like a typical building. What we did with this marketing was we identified an area that a lot of landlords were trying to get into. A lot of landlords wanted to buy into this area. The rents were high. The property values were low where they could make a good return. We don't care about any of that. I sell to landlords, first-time homeowners, VA owners. I don't care. I don't care if it's, when I say VA, I mean the people that have a VA loan, like the government loans or the military loans. So we don't care. We sell to anybody, but we identified an area that had a lot of activity of landlords trying to buy into that area. This seller was a landlord and they were eager to sell because he needed the cash for another investment. He actually wanted to go buy into a larger building. He had a deal with the 6-flat he wanted to buy. So he wanted to sell off this and a couple of other properties. And this was the last one that he had left. So this one, the property had a tenant that had just signed a new lease. He came across this 6-flat deal and he did not expect to sell this building, but he needed the cash. So he wanted to go ahead and sell. Again, this is another property that if you're looking at those distressed buyer lists, it's not going to come up on that because this buyer was not under distress. He was just selling because he wanted the money. It was nothing wrong with the property, no city liens, no problems or anything like that. Owner did not want the tenant to know he was selling. He did not want the tenant to know he was selling. We don't go visit the house, so it wasn't a problem for the tenant not to see us. So no issues. Like I said, just wanted to sell. The person just wanted out of the property so he could take the money. He did want his money. So this wasn't something that you're going to do a creative finance and he carries paper for 6 years or anything like that. We don't do any of that stuff. We don't need to do any of that stuff. And doing this process, you don't need to do any of that stuff. So the term, seller wanted $90,000 for the property. Seller estimated the value was $125,000. Did the seller provide interior photos or did you have an inspector go to the property? Both. So that's the easiest answer I can give you. Both. Seller provides photos because it's part of our process. We also have inspections done on the property. So both. We don't leave things to pass. Everything that I'm talking about, it may sound easy. It may sound like, oh, you just did this and we just guessed. And no, we have a process that we work through that makes sure that we're not going to get screwed on the deal. So you talked about how do you find these great deals. I want to show you, this is a deal where it doesn't look that great. The seller wants $90,000 after they talk to us. The seller estimated the value was about $125,000. So $90,000, they want 125, or it was worth 125, they want 90,000. So it's not like, wow, this seems like a ton of profit and a ton of money to get into or something like that. So I want you to see that. What they ended up accepting after we went through our process, they agreed to, we offered 70,000. They went back and forth. We ended up at 71,750. That's the number we got for the seller, 71,750 on this property. And remember, it had a tenant in it. Now the tenant was paying rent and everything else. We ended up selling this property. Now, this one took a little bit longer. It took 4 months to sell. We sold it at $129,000, so not far off of the number of the estimated value. We had a $48,000 profit, and it took 4 months to sell. So after the closing cost, after the payments that you make every month and all that kind of stuff, I want you to know that this profit is money that actually hit our account. It is not money that, you know how some people say, well, I made $90,000. But by the time they take off the closing cost and the mortgage payments and the repair costs, they only made $60,000. This is the actual profit that hit our account. That's the only money I count, the money that I actually get. So this property took 4 months to sell. So let me show you a cute couple of things. Let's add up the results from these 3 deals, because when I talk to you guys on the phone and you tell me I would like to see myself make $5,000, I have to literally bite my tongue because of the fact that the numbers are so low based on what we do and where you're going to be at. Let's add up the results. Deal number 1 did $40,000 in a month's time, so it took about a month. No rehab, no dealing with tenants. Deal number 2 took $55,000, made $55,000 after sitting on the property for 90 days. So we did hold on to it for 90 days. Deal number 3 took $48,000, collected rent. We got rent during that time, and we sold the property in 4 months. The new owner took it with the tenants and was very happy. We sat down with the tenant just to explain to them by phone what we were doing. They were fine with it. Tenant never stopped paying, never had any issues. Total is $143,000 in profit over 4 months. So in this 4-month period, total profit from these 3 deals came out to $143,000. Imagine putting $143,000 into your bank account over a 4-month period. So for all of you that are thinking, but I don't want to hold the house for 3 months. I don't want to hold the house for 2 months. What am I going to do in 3 months? You got $143,000. If you can't figure out what to do, and hire an accountant, or better yet, hire me, I'll show you what to do with $143,000. you've spent, and I want to go over this, you've spent exactly $3,000 to $5,000 total in marketing to acquire these properties. So to get these properties, all of these properties, not one of them, all of these properties, total marketing money that we spent was $3,000 to $5,000. So I'm going to ask you in the comments, how many of you will be willing to spend $3,000 to $5,000 in marketing, not each month, but total, to get $143,000 in profit? Is it worth it? Now, for you, those of you, I haven't seen your answers, but I'm assuming it is. It's a $143,000 profit. So during this time, you are also negotiating ongoing deals. I want you to understand that you're not, it doesn't stop. Remember, I told you this business doesn't stop. So you're still getting deals in while you're selling these deals, while you're getting checks, you're still getting more deals. It's an ongoing process. This business, and I say this with all, look at my face if you think I'm joking, this business changes lives. It is, I can't say anything short of that, because the amount of money that you will generate following a proven system like this, and I know if you're talking about those whole things, you're talking about those people, well, I wholesale and I can get into wholesale because it doesn't cost me much money, or I want to fix and flip because I like to fix up properties. Are you going to do 140,000, 143,000 in 4 months? If you did one flip and you're lucky enough to sell that one flip and make 143,000, you've also put out a ton of money. I put out $3,000 to $5,000. Tell me where you can put out $3,000 to $5,000 and generate 143,000. So let's go on to the next part, because the next part is where it's really going to get you. This is just the beginning with QuickTurn. This is not extraordinary results. This is not, oh my goodness, I can't believe it results. These are average. These aren't the best deals we had. I did not want to show you best deals that we had, because then you would have said, oh, Art, this is ridiculous. But those are average deals. QuickTurn is a business model. It is not a strategy. It is a business model. The main benefits are consistency, profit, and scale. And for those of you that aren't sure what scale is when you're going through and you want to do something where you don't have to spend every waking moment doing it. I'm on a call with you right now, and people are working to close deals for us right now at the same time that I'm talking to you. I could not do that unless my business scales. You don't need prior investment experience to be successful. Nothing that I talked to you about in any of these seemed like we had some kind of magic thing that we did. It's very straightforward, very common. You do the same thing over and over again. That's what makes it, that's part of the secret sauce. You don't have to do all these different strategies, just do it over and over again. This works great in a changing market. In markets where the market interest rates are going up, property is slowing down, this thing will still make sense. It will still work. It creates extremely nice cash flows. I should have changed that to extremely nice cash flows. And it's the perfect setup to invest in commercial real estate for long term. Once you make this kind of money, you take kind of the money you need to live, and you can take the rest of the money and put it tax deferred into commercial real estate. So it's a great way to grow into a larger business model of doing commercial real estate. So I hope you guys get this stuff. If you want help, if you want to learn how to build a strategic QuickTurn business like this, if you want to see what that looks like, then I'm happy to jump on a call with you. If you've gotten text, Facebook Messenger or text messages from me or Aisha or anybody on our team, I want you to know that that is to talk to you about this kind of business and what you want to do, what kind of stuff you want to accomplish. That's what we talk about in those calls. So that's what we're kind of, discussing. If you want to get on a call and talk to us, I'm going to put the link in the chat to set up a call. You can just click on the thing and set up a calendar call with me or anybody on the team. We'll go over what you need. We'll give you some video training to look at before the call so you can kind of see what's going on. And even if we can't directly help you, some people are not ready to build this type of business. If you're not ready, we'll share some resources with you and trying to give you some help to kind of get you to get a place where you can get into this position to build this kind of business. This kind of business is real. It is very, very possible. You just have to get the knowledge and learn the process, and you can do this too. So I hope this has been beneficial to you guys. I hope you have learned something. I hope this has been something worth sharing. Let me know in the comments if you've enjoyed it, if you want me to do more like this to show other deals and stuff like that, or you want me to, if you got something you want me to talk about, like you're questioning, well, Art, how do you do that? I'm happy to share. I'm open to share. And we'll talk about it in the next live. So until next time, I wish you guys the best. I hope you all are doing well. Enjoy the rest of your week. And as always, happy hunting.